You felt ignored, like you didn't matter. Every text unanswered, every moment cold. And you started to believe the lie that they don't care. But let me tell you something. Avoidants love differently. And just because they don't say it out loud doesn't mean they're not screaming it inside. Today, I'm going to show you the signs they do love you, even if they're too scared to admit it. You might not realize it at first, but when someone with an avoidant attachment style stays physically or emotionally close, even in small, subtle ways, it's actually a massive sign of how much they care. The reason this is so often misunderstood is because on the surface, it doesn't look like closeness. It looks like distance. It looks like silence. It looks like they don't care. But that's exactly where the misconception begins. Avoidantly attached people have a deep fear of intimacy. This doesn't mean they don't want connection. It means they were wired often from early childhood to closeness as risky or even dangerous. So when they start to feel love or attachment, their system doesn't scream, lean in. It screams, protect yourself, back off. But here's the thing. If you still see them orbiting your life in any capacity, that is not accidental. That is effort on their terms. Let's break this down. You text them and they don't always respond. You reach out and they seem emotionally unavailable, but days later, they watch your Instagram story. They send a meme. They bring you coffee out of nowhere. These aren't random or thoughtless gestures. They are their version of connection. Avoidants aren't great at emotional expression. So instead of saying, I miss you, they send you something that reminds them of you. Instead of calling, they show up when you least expect it. Their love isn't verbal, it's behavioral. Staying close without getting too close is their coping mechanism. They want proximity because they feel something real for you, but they maintain distance because getting too close triggers fear. Fear of being vulnerable, fear of being seen, and ultimately fear of being hurt. It's a balancing act that makes no sense if you're someone who experiences love through openness and communication. But to an avoidant, this dance of distance is the safest way to stay connected. What's important here is recognizing the effort it takes for them to even do that. Watching your story, remembering something you said in passing, asking about your dog, these are their emotional check-ins. These are signs they haven't detached emotionally, even if they can't articulate their feelings. And if you've ever tried to walk away from someone, avoidant, truly step back, you might notice that's when they suddenly reach out. They'll pop back into your messages. They'll find some excuse to reconnect. That's because your absence activates their fear of loss. But they won't come back with an I love you or I made a mistake. They'll come back sideways, maybe with a joke, maybe with a favor, maybe just with, hey, it seems small, but it's big. How they stay close. What they're really saying in all of these moments is this: I care about you, but I don't know how to show it the way you expect. And if you miss those signs, if you only look for love in the ways you express it, you'll think they don't care at all, but they do. In their own quiet, guarded way, they're showing up. Maybe not in grand romantic gestures, but in persistent inconsistency, in not letting you go completely. So yes, it can feel like they're ignoring you. It can feel like they don't want you close. But the fact that they're still there, still reaching out in their own language, still finding small ways to stay connected, that proves something powerful. They may be scared, they may be guarded, but they're trying. And for someone with an avoidant attachment style, that's not just affection. That's love. When you're dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, one of the most confusing things is the disconnect between what they say or don't say and what they actually feel. If you're someone who needs verbal reassurance or direct emotional expression, an avoidant silence can feel like rejection. But here's what most people don't realize. Avoidants often express their love through actions, not words. And if you pay attention to what they do, not just what they say, you'll start to see signs of deep emotional investment that might have gone unnoticed. Avoidants struggle with vulnerability. Saying, I love you or I miss you might feel like exposing themselves too much, too fast. So instead, they default to showing love in quieter, more practical ways. They'll offer help, they'll fix something that's broken, they'll remember your favorite snack, or send you a song that reminds them of you. These acts might seem small, but for an avoidant, they are significant. That's them stepping out of their comfort zone and trying to care for you without having to put their heart fully on the line. Imagine this. You had a rough day, and they don't necessarily sit down and ask how you feel, but later that night they bring you dinner or take care of a task you didn't get to. That's not indifference. It's love translated into action. To them, taking care of you physically or practically feels safer than expressing emotion directly. It's their way of saying, I see you, I care, I've got you, even if the words never leave their mouth. Another key sign is consistency. An avoidant may not be the most emotionally expressive person, but if they keep showing up for you in small but meaningful ways, that's no accident. They don't invest time and energy into people they don't care about if they're still doing things for you, even if they're not constantly texting or saying sweet things. It's because you matter. They might help you move, fix your car, walk your dog, or support your goals quietly from the background. Those actions may not be romantic in the traditional sense, but they are deeply meaningful when you understand how avoidants operate. In many cases, these actions speak even louder than words. Because when an avoidant takes action on your behalf, it's not impulsive, it's intentional. Remember, avoidants are cautious by nature. They don't jump into emotional situations lightly. So when they invest energy into your life, they're doing so because they've decided consciously or unconsciously that you're important enough to overcome some of their fears. And here's the real test. Watch how they react when you're not around. Do they check in when you're sick? Do they remember small details you told them weeks ago? Do they do thoughtful things without being asked? These are all ways they silently communicate affection. They might not shower you with compliments or write love letters, but they'll show love by showing up, by doing, by making sure your needs are met in the only way they feel safe offering care. It's easy to overlook these gestures if you're expecting love to look loud, verbal, and expressive. But in the world of avoidant attachment, love is quiet. It's cautious. It's more likely to look like taking your car for an oil change than a candlelit dinner. And if you start paying attention to the way they act rather than what they say or don't say, you might discover they've been showing you love all along. You just didn't know the language. When someone with an avoidant attachment style starts opening up to you even a little, it's not just a casual moment, it's a big deal. Avoidants are often mislabeled as cold or emotionally unavailable, but the truth is much deeper. They aren't heartless, they're guarded. Emotionally opening up feels dangerous to them. Vulnerability is a risk, and their default mode is to protect themselves from rejection, disappointment, or loss. So when an avoidant begins to share their inner world with you, even in small fragments, it's actually a strong indicator that you mean something to them. Think about it. People with avoidant tendencies were often raised in environments where emotional expression was discouraged or even punished. They may have learned early on that showing feelings led to discomfort, shame, or being ignored. So, as adults, they lean on independence and emotional distance as a way to feel safe. Sharing something personal, anything that reveals fear, sadness, or even affection, is an act of vulnerability that takes a lot of internal negotiation for them. That's why you need to pay close attention to those quiet moments where they let their guard down. Maybe it's a story from their childhood. Maybe they open up about stress at work or express doubt about themselves. It might not be poetic or dramatic, but for them, it's revealing. They're letting you see the parts of them they usually hide, even from themselves. And if they're doing that with you, it's because there's a level of trust forming beneath the surface. That's not casual, that's connection. This kind of openness from an avoidant won't look like a flood of emotions. It'll be more like a leak, slow, small, and carefully controlled. But those small leaks matter. You might notice them say something like, I usually don't talk about this, or I've never told anyone this before. Those phrases are your cue. That's when the wall is lowering. That's when they're testing to see if it's safe to let you in.
And here's the thing, they watch your reaction closely. When they do share something personal, they're silently asking, will you judge me? Will you reject me? Will this be used against me later? If you respond with warmth, patience, and non-judgment, you're reinforcing that safety. And once they feel that safety, even if they never admit it out loud, they start associating you with security. That's when their trust deepens and more of their authentic self begins to come through.
You may also notice that after opening up, they retreat again. This is very common and doesn't mean they've changed their mind or no longer trust you. It's just that vulnerability often leaves avoidants feeling emotionally exposed. And exposure is uncomfortable, so they pull back to regulate themselves. But the fact that they opened up in the first place is the real signal. It shows that their feelings for you are stronger than their fear, at least in that moment. Over time, these moments of openness tend to grow in frequency and depth, especially when met with understanding. And even if progress feels slow, every time they let you see behind the mask, they're making a conscious choice to share something real. That choice is love in action, not the dramatic, sweeping kind you see in movies, but a quiet, cautious kind that's rooted in trust. So don't dismiss those small moments when they talk about their past, share their fears, or admit their feelings. Those are not random. They are signs that you've cracked through the outer shell and found something real inside. When you're in a relationship or connection with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, one of the most confusing and emotionally draining patterns you'll encounter is the push-pull dynamic. One moment, they're warm, attentive, maybe even affectionate. Then suddenly they pull away, becoming distant, cold, or unresponsive. To someone unfamiliar with how avoidants operate emotionally, this feels like rejection. It feels like they're losing interest or deciding you're not important. But in reality, this pattern is one of the clearest signs that they do have deep feelings. They just don't know how to manage them. Avoidants fear intimacy, but they also fear losing people they care about. So when they start to get close to someone and real feelings start to develop, they feel emotionally overwhelmed. Closeness triggers anxiety for them, not because they don't like you, but because being emotionally vulnerable feels unsafe. Getting too close makes them feel like they're losing control, and that fear kicks in. Their survival instinct tells them to protect themselves by retreating, creating space, or shutting down emotionally. But here's what's crucial to understand. When an avoidant pulls away, it's not because they've stopped caring. It's because they care so much that their nervous system feels threatened. They're trying to create emotional distance to manage their own fear and vulnerability. It's their internal wiring, not your value, that causes the withdrawal. And if you wait, if you don't chase them or pressure them during this retreat, something interesting happens. They come back. And when they return, that's the proof. That's the moment that shows their feelings are real. If they didn't care, they wouldn't return. If they weren't emotionally invested, your absence wouldn't matter, but it does matter. Often, after distancing themselves, avoidants start missing the connection. If you respond with anger, clinginess, or pressure, it reinforces their fear of closeness. But if you give them space, stay calm, and hold your emotional ground, you're showing them that connection doesn't have to be dangerous, that emotional intimacy doesn't always mean loss of control. Over time, this builds trust. And as trust builds, the intensity of the push-pull may lessen. So if you've been caught in this back and forth with someone avoidant, don't take the retreat as a sign they don't care. Take their return as the real message. Every time they come back, they're choosing you again despite their fear. And that choice is meaningful. It's their way of loving you from within the limits of what holds safe to them. And as hard as it is, that push-pull rhythm isn't proof they don't love you. It's actually how they show that they do. When someone with an avoidant attachment style distances themselves, it's easy to assume they don't care. They go silent. They stop reaching out. Maybe they seem fine without you. From the outside, it can feel cold and confusing, like you never really mattered to them in the first place. But here's what most people miss. If that avoidant person circles back with signs of guilt, regret, or concern after pulling away, it's a clear signal that they do have real feelings. Because avoidants don't show remorse unless someone truly matters to them. Avoidantly attached people often rely on emotional distance as their primary coping mechanism. When emotions run high or intimacy becomes too intense, their instinct is to retreat to protect themselves from feeling overwhelmed or exposed. So when they go quiet or walk away, they're not necessarily trying to punish you or escape the relationship. More often, they're trying to regulate their own discomfort. But that retreat doesn't mean they're feeling shut off. In fact, once they've created space and calmed their internal system, something else often bubbles to the surface. Why? Because in the stillness, they begin to reflect. Avoidants usually need distance before they can process emotional events. During that time, they may start to recognize how their silence or withdrawal affected you. They might remember the look on your face or replay a conversation where you asked for closeness and they shut down. And if they care, really care, those memories don't just fade away. They sit with them and they start to feel the weight of their absence. Now, avoidants aren't usually going to come back with a full emotional apology or a deep conversation about their behavior. That level of vulnerability is still uncomfortable for them. But they will show guilt or regret in indirect ways. Maybe they check in unexpectedly. Maybe they say, "I've been thinking about you," or ask how you're doing after days or weeks of silence. They might even apologize lightly. "Sorry, I've been MIA." Not to brush it off, but because that's as much as they can say without feeling too emotionally exposed. These small expressions matter. They're not meaningless. For an avoidant, any form of guilt or recognition of emotional impact is a sign of emotional connection. They may not fully understand why they feel bad about pulling away, but the fact that they feel anything is your evidence that you matter more than their fear. They might offer to help you with something. They might try to reconnect without directly addressing the past. But underneath those actions is this quiet truth. They know they hurt you, and they're trying, however awkwardly, to repair it. And that's what separates someone who's emotionally invested from someone who's indifferent. Indifference has no guilt, no reflection, no effort to make things right. But when an avoidant circles back with signs of remorse, it's a big deal. Because for them, facing emotional discomfort is hard. Admitting they may have caused pain is harder. But they do it not always gracefully, not always directly, because you're not just another person to them. You're someone they actually care about. So don't dismiss those subtle signs, that quiet text, that awkward apology, that sudden offer to help or make things normal again. Those are all avoidant versions of repair attempts. They're proof that despite their fear and emotional limitations, they do feel love, they do care, and most importantly, they're trying, even if they don't know how to say it out loud. If you've ever felt ignored by someone avoidant, listen up. Their silence isn't the absence of love. It's fear. Every small act, every quiet return, every guarded share is them screaming, "I care," in the only way they know how. But love like this needs understanding, not pressure. If you recognize these signs, don't chase. Hold space. Because sometimes the most powerful proof of love is found in the quietest moments. So look closer, learn their language, and don't walk away from real love just because it whispers.